O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:07. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. Best way to get your day started here in your nation's capital. Coming up in 30 minutes, John Curran. He'd like your vote for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. And at 8:35, Eric Swoyer of Washington Times will chime in on Chief Justice Roberts wading into political waters with some statements he gave to Politico. I don't know, when you're talking to Politico, maybe by definition you're being political. We'll get into all of that. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I think you know this person.
I do.
It's Stephanie Lundquist-Arora, not only a mom here at Fairfax County, Virginia, and an author, but also the Fairfax chapter leader for Independent Women's Network, which Julie Gunlock knows a little something about. Why don't you bring your friend to the table here and let her tell her story?
Stephanie, thanks for coming on this morning.
Hi, Julie. Hi, Larry. Always a pleasure.
So you broke this story. This is incredible. Your kids go to public school in Northern Virginia, and you have been a fierce champion for parents in the Fairfax County schools. In fact, you're sort of have emerged as a leader of how parents can respectfully yet forcefully fight back. Tell us this latest story. What is going on in the Fairfax County schools?
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate that. Well, recently the West Springfield High School has put up a display, and they decided to put the ABCs in the hallway, which is really interesting in high school anyways, but just an interesting idea.
Larry,
I don't know if
this is
it's
an
really
indictment
remedial
of the
learning.
Fairfax County Public
Right.
Schools. I mean, by the time you're a sophomore, you should know your alphabet, okay?
You would think. Some of them have filled up. They need to go over this again. But, you know, instead of A being for, and this is for Women's History Month, it's a Women's History elective course. Instead of A being for Apple, or even if it's for Women's History Month, instead of A being for Aviator, Amelia Earhart,
Yes.
they just start out with A is for abortion with a picture of a coat hanger and a positive pregnancy test. They have several others. I could go on. I could talk about how crazy it is all day. H is for hope with Kamala Harris. J is for justice with the Palestinian flag and the trans flag next to the Statue of Liberty. Yes, there's several. T is for trans woman. We can't forget that. And Women's History Month to erase women.
So T is for men.
Right.
Yes, T is for men for Women's History Month. So it's just such an obscene display, and you wonder, how could this possibly have graced the hallway, the history hallway that everybody walks past? So I emailed them and I said, how did this make the display? And they basically tried to ignore me.
Of course.
They didn't, and I said, this is really inappropriate, particularly the A is for abortion is, I just can't even imagine how that would make the litmus test of things being okay in a public school, no matter your political inclination. Like, all Americans who value a solid fundamental education for our kids should object to this. And in fact, they do. I think even if you're a pro-choice person, this is an obscene thing to put in a hallway. And I would really like to commend my son and his friends really took issue with this and brought it to my attention for recognizing just how inappropriate this kind of indoctrination in public schools is. And after I published an article about it in the Daily Signal, and after I did that, a mother in the district reached out to me over the weekend, and she told me that her son, who attends the school, tore up the A for abortion sign. He was really upset by this. He thought it was, they're a religious family. He thought it was just really inappropriate, like we all do, and he had that reaction. Yeah. So the administrators, of course it was on camera, brought him down to the office and counseled him for having a visceral reaction, and then they immediately replaced it.
Of course.
So obviously a student was emotionally bothered by this, which we should all be. Even adults are emotionally bothered by this. And I think it's really gaslighting by definition, right? Like as if the young man's response to the whole thing is the issue here. It's like telling an assault victim, well, let's talk about what you did. Was it dark when you were walking at night? Like when you got jumped.
Right.
Right. And they
How
claim
short
to be
was your skirt?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you've got.
And they claim to be inclusive, but they're just like, they're overtly engaging in viewpoint discrimination, even against children.
Yeah, you write up the story. It's incredible. J is for justice. It's a Statue of Liberty holding a sort of a sign. A Lady Liberty is surrounded by the Palestinian flag, the Ukrainian flag, and the transgender flag. N is for Now, the National Organization of Women. L is for Leadership, features Kamala Harris, AOC, and Michelle Obama. Of course, no Republicans pictured. This is just obscene. It really is. And what is has there been any reaction? Because this has gone viral. This is now national news. And again, thanks to your excellent reporting, has there been any change? You say this display is still up at the school, correct?
Yes, as of 3 p.m. yesterday, the display was still up, and there's been an outpouring of reaction. A number of parents have called me, forwarded me their emails. They're sending emails, and I encourage your listeners also, if you take issue with this, let your voice be heard, let people know, send an email to your school board member, the superintendent, and the administrators at West Springfield High School, which is, by the way, only 17 miles from the White House. So this is definitely the definition of indoctrination of our children in their public schools. But as of 3 p.m. yesterday, the display was still up, despite all of these emails and this kind of outpouring of response. And in their defense, because you're like, what could the defense possibly be? Right. Their defense in response to a different media outlet, their defense was that, this was a student project, which I think is funny because the schools and the district administrators basically try to condition a project where they tell kids to do a certain thing in order to justify it. Yep. And how strange is it that everything on that wall is so ideologically homogenous? If it was really just a simple project that wasn't completely orchestrated by the teacher, there would be at least a little bit more kind of more variation. But I would also like to add to you that the teacher of this, according to the West Springfield High School website, she is also in charge of the Democratic Socialists of America Club and the Young Democrats Club. So if you just think about the ideological biases of the teacher, it's you can see how this. And one more thing about her, she also teaches U.S. history, which is a required class. And for an extra credit assignment, in the previous year, she's asked students for extra credit to spell out on the essay what they have done or will do to help the LGBTQ community. So this is, to say that this is student-led is just absolutely ridiculous.
It's outrageous. Yeah, exactly. Even if you're buying that it's student-led, there's supposed to be adults in the room. There's supposed to be paid adults who are teachers. Imagine, I'm thinking if they came up and made P for pornography or P for prostitution, which many feminists would say are incredibly empowering for women. But I bet you the adult in the room would say, yeah, maybe we can find something else for P. My favorite is M. M is not for motherhood. M is for mansplaining. And by the way, Julie, mansplaining is when a guy needs to explain something that should be normal to a woman, and then
Larry, I deal with it every morning. Every morning.
So all right, never mind. Stephanie, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you for raising this issue, and we look forward to hearing the official word from not just this high school, but from Fairfax County Public Schools writ large and the school board. Something tells me this will come up at the next school board meeting, and I sure hope it does. And we'll be here to cover it for you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
It is
Thanks so much for having me.
7:15 WMAL traffic.